Boxing is often regarded as the most storied and popular combat sport, boasting a rich history that spans centuries. From its iconic figures to modern-day champions, the sport has captivated audiences worldwide with its raw intensity and dramatic showdowns. However, beneath the spectacle lies a darker side. Boxing has been marred by numerous scandals and tragic incidents that have shaken the very foundations of the sport. So let's delve into some disturbing boxing stories that have left a lasting impact on the sport's lore. James Butler Jr., known as the Harlem Hammer, had a promising boxing career which spanned from 1996 to 2004, even challenging for a super middleweight world title but falling short. However, early signs of Butler's callous demeanour became apparent after his loss to Richard Grant. As the two fighters waited for the results of the fight to be announced, Butler would request for his gloves to be cut off. Once Grant was announced as the winner and approached Butler to congratulate him, Grant would be caught off guard with a vicious sucker punch from Butler. He would lay dazed on the ring mat, bleeding from the mouth. Grant suffered a discolored jaw and a lacerated tongue from the punch. The crazy thing about this fight was that it was at a freaking charity event to raise funds to assist police officers and the fire department who were affected by the September 11th attacks. Following this resentful act of violence, Butler would be convicted of assault and spend 4 months in prison. Butler would not return to boxing for 3 years and would only have a few more fights. But if only the story were to end there. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Just 2 months after his final boxing fight, Butler would murder freelance sports writer Sam Kellerman at Kellerman's apartment in Los Angeles. Sam Kellerman being the younger brother of Max Kellerman, a former color commentator for HBO Boxing. And just to add some background information to the Kellerman brothers, they at one point formed a hip-hop duo known as Max and Sam, and were even signed under Columbia Records in '94. Anyway, Butler was considered a suspect to the murder since he had been friends with Sam Kellerman for over a decade. Kellerman had been instrumental in promoting Butler's career and had offered Butler a place to stay while Butler attempted to revive his career. It was found that Butler had repeatedly struck Kellerman in the head with a hammer and proceeded to burn Kellerman's apartment to cover up the crime. Butler was sentenced to nearly 30 years in prison with no concrete motive proven. It's been speculated that Butler was having relationship issues with his girlfriend whilst also reported as being mentally unwell. Prosecutors would add that it was at this time that Kellerman asked Butler to move out from his apartment. A disagreement ensued on how long Butler could stay, which led to Butler picking up the hammer he would murder Kellerman with. This horrific act effectively ended Butler's boxing career and freedom. Edwin Valero grew prominence in the late 2000s as a feared world champion that was knocking opponents spark out one after another. His brief but fiery career ended with a 100% knockout record, and at one point Valero was being built as a future star-studded opponent to a prime Manny Pacquiao. But Valero possessed a dark streak filled with malice intent outside the ring that loomed larger and larger until it eventually imploded. On April 18th, 2010, the body of Edwin Valero's wife, Jennifer, was found in a hotel in Venezuela with multiple stab wounds on her body. Valero would then come forward and admit to murdering his wife. Before proper punishment and justice could be served, Valero was found the next day hanging in his prison cell, his sweatpants being the noose tied around his neck. It was never confirmed what caused Valero to behave the way he did and ultimately carry out the murder of his wife, but the general consensus is that a head injury he sustained from a motorcycle accident before he became a pro boxer may have played a factor. This injury would then be exacerbated by repeated blows to the head he would endure in his boxing career, leading to a case of degenerative brain injuries which caused the brain to gradually lose function. Of course, this doesn't justify the twisted crimes Valero committed, but are merely variables to consider in such tragic incidents. If we look into this a little further, Edwin Valero had a professional fight almost every month, sometimes twice a month in his early career. For Valero to take even a few punches to the head so soon after the crash just means his brain never got the time to recover if there was even a chance for it to heal. The condition of his brain not only destroyed Valero's career in life, but also took the life of an innocent person who was just in the presence of a physically and mentally damaged individual. November 13th, 1982. Caesars Palace, Las Vegas. A contest for the WBA lightweight title was taking place between champion Ray Mancini and challenger Kim Duk-koo. The world will soon learn that this fight will become one of the most pivotal moments in boxing history. The fight itself was an intense and brutal encounter, both fighters exchanging and landing an innumerable amount of power punches, which was demonstrated by Mancini's left eye being completely closed. However, Mancini would turn the tide in the later rounds and began to dominate. This culminated with a ferocious right hand in the 14th round that sent Kim flying into the ropes, his head hitting the canvas. Despite the severe damage Kim received, he managed to stand up, but referee Richard Green put a stop to the fight. Shortly after the bout, Kim was rushed to the hospital on a stretcher. He was diagnosed with a subdural hematoma and underwent brain surgery. Despite the hospital's best efforts to save him, Kim never regained consciousness and sadly passed away 5 days after the bout. Even more tragically, Kim's mother would take her own life 3 months after Kim's passing. But it doesn't end there. The referee for the bout, Richard Green, would also take his own life almost a year after the fight. Such a tragic turn of events. Ray Mancini would soon fall into deep depression after Kim's death, constantly blaming himself for the aftermath of the fight, and his boxing career was significantly impacted. As a result of this awful incident, a series of major changes to the sport was triggered. Boxing fights were reduced from a maximum of 15 rounds to 12 rounds. The standard 8 counts was introduced, and fighters had to undergo more thorough medical tests before a bout. The aftermath of the fights became a watershed moment in boxing history, forever changing the landscape of boxing.